Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited because I have Alex Emerit on the line. Say hello, Alex.
Hello.
And many of you may not know, most of you I would assume actually don't know who Alex is because Alex is a new French designer. Your first game is or big game is being published at Essen this year from HABA, right? Boom, Bang,
Correct.
Gold. Um,
Perfect.
and you have a game in the works with IELLO, correct?
Correct.
And actually
It's
go ahead.
it will be released for Nuremberg 2018.
Awesome. All these European conventions.
Yes.
But so one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk with Alex is I was saying to him on the line just before we hit record, you know, in the States, this channel and all the people we're talking to are sort of from this indie publisher, new age designer, young, not necessarily young in age, but just sort of not the big names. We're the smallest names in the States, give or take. I mean, some people are bigger than others. And, when I think about France as being such a hallmark for design and the board game industry, I've really had no connection point with any of sort of that younger, new, interesting scene. I mean, everything's, the big names, the Brunos, the Bausa, that kind of thing. But, many of the smaller or newer designers aren't necessarily at conventions in the United States, right? Maybe perhaps one or two, but not as much. And so I'm just interested in learning about what it's like to be new designer in France right now, because that's got to be awesome, right?
Yeah, it's really awesome because the like in the States, the industry is growing really fast and it's full of energy. So and the community is tight. So we can meet the big names in France. We can meet with Antoine Baudard or with the Brunos. So it's they're really close to the other designers. If you write an email, they answer you. They give you advice.
That's pretty
So
nice.
the France is a small country compared to the States. So the community is really tight. But there are a lot of new designers in France too, like in the States, for about these 5 last years. But the design community is really full of energy. It's really great.
And that's awesome to hear. And I want to talk. I want to ask you some sort of how you got into it. But just as an observation, I mean, that's very much how we would describe the community in the States. I don't want to get into sort of stereotypes, might not the national types, but from the States, usually I think there's the sort of assumption in French that niceness and community is sort of it's a different sort of attitude, and so it's interesting. It's wonderful to hear that it's just very much the same about working together and making awesome stuff. So for you, could you just walk us through how you, got into game design and because HABA is a big name, IELLO is a big name. How did you step into it?
So I stopped creating 2.5 years ago. I was playing this small Kickstarter game. Maybe you know it, Yardmaster Express.
Sure. Well, is that Yardmaster? So I got Yardmaster over there. Express is somewhere else, but yeah, I know it. Crash Games.
Yes, and I really like the simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
That you get only 2 info on the cards, only whether it's the color or the number. So I started designing this game with 2 only info on my cards, and that's how everything started. It was like in April 2015.
Right.
I worked on a game. I created a PNP. I put it on a very famous French website for board games, which is called Trade Track. And the response of the community was really good. People downloaded it, played it, created, and they say, yeah, the game is good. I get a small French publisher, IELLO, who gave me some advice. So then 2 months later, I go in this big con in Paris, the biggest con in Paris, which is called Paris is Playing. There must be around 10,000 attendees on the con.
Just to interrupt for a second, I've never heard of that convention. And that speaks more about me than anything else in board games, right? But anyway, go on. So this is the biggest convention in Paris, right?
Yes, like it's 10,000 attendees.
That's a big
This
number.
year, I think it was like 15,000 attendees.
Mm-hmm.
So get 5,000 attendees in 2 years, so it's quite good. I show it to big publishers like Repos Production, Blue Orange, and things, and the response was good. And 3 months later, I signed it with a small French publisher. That was my first design. But 1 year
Which
later,
publisher was that?
it's a really small publisher, and they start the first game they tried to do. They do two crowdfunding, and then they could not get their first game out with, with Kickstarter.
Sure, it's not
So
easy. It's not easy.
no, it's not. I think they were not well prepared. So they could never get their first game out. So mine was second. So it has never been published, this first design. So I'm still looking for a publisher with this one. And 2 months after this first design, I created another one, which is Boom Bang Go. I participated with two game design contests in France, and I won both of them. And
Congratulations.
and I showed it to big publishers like Gigamic, Blue Orange. They said, yeah, the game is great, but it's a game you have to play with the box. And if you want to play with 5 people, as everybody is playing simultaneously, you need a big box. And they will tell me the game is great, but the box is too big for our line.
What do they know?
So,
what do they know?
So I use the old-fashioned way. I translate my rules in English and I send them to HABA via their website. And surprisingly, 3 weeks later, I get an answer saying, "Yeah, the game looks really fun. Can you make a prototype and send it to Germany?" So I do that. I sent my prototype to Germany. It was like in November 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And in March, they tell me I was on the short list for the for the next SN release. I wait a few more months, like 8 months, and then I was on the 30 games shortlist, then on the 20 games shortlist, and finally,
It turns out you won. It turns out you got on the final list. That's awesome, and an awesome story. A couple things I wanted to ask you about along the way. So one, what was the name of that website you mentioned, the French board game community site?
It's called Trick Track.
Trick Track. And is that like, when you described it, I'm going to look it up after and figure it out because I'm having a, say it one more time, say it.
Trick Track.
Click clack, like the sound?
TRICTRAC.
Oh, Trick Track. Got it. Is it effectively like Board Game Geek? Like, is it a database site with a lot of information, or is it just mostly a community site?
No, it's a big data site.
And
you got all the games are on it. You get ratings, you get reviews, articles, and a lot of videos.
And then would you say, so
a big community, yeah, a big forum.
How relevant? I mean, I'm just curious. Like, how relevant in France is Board Game Geek? Is it, because in the United States, Board Game Geek is like the center of the board game database and content.
No, in France, it's Trick Track and Board Game Geek.
Got it.
For the geeks.
Right. Got it.
The one who can read English, listen to English.
Got it. Cool. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check out that site just to get a feel for it.
But this site is really famous in France. It's I think it's the biggest in Europe because I think there are 3 or 4 people working on this website.
Mm-hmm. Just maintaining and making it better. And
yes, but living from this website, so it's a big one.
Cool.
All the French publishers, they go there to make good videos, quality videos, rule explanations. You can have live play of the games. So it's really nice.
Very cool. Okay, and then so another question: French publishers, right? I mean, everyone knows lots of.
Yes.
If you were to name 5 French publishers, which 5 would you name?
Days of Wonder,
Okay.
IELLO,
Mm-hmm.
Asmodee, but all the with all the studios from Asmodee. I have to name my friend Arnaud from IELLO, which is a really small publisher, but
Hey.
he's doing it with passion
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
10 years. And
One more.
a fifth one, Blue Orange. Did I say
Got
Blue
it.
Orange?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Blue Orange because they have an office based out of San Francisco, and I know some of the guys
Yeah.
there. And then also Madagot is French as well, right?
Yes, Matagot, yes.
Madagot.
Matagot.
And so the other part of what you were saying is, I mean, it really sounds like when you describe the sort of, hey, I went to a show, I showed it to some people, there were some people interested, some people weren't, I entered a contest, I submitted it in English to HABA. You could, that's almost identical to the majority of stories you'd see in the States. While that's very, at the same time, that's pretty traditional. Even though your first publisher went through Kickstarter and crowdfunding, how much would you say Kickstarter or Indiegogo or even perhaps some French crowdfunding I'm not aware of, in the States at least, it's been transformative to the game industry in terms of the impact it's had over the last 5 years. What would you say the impact from your vantage point is from Kickstarter? Is it something some companies do, and I mean, or is it a main part of the conversation? How do you guys think about it?
I think all the established companies, they do it the traditional way because in France, I think it's like in the States, we've got a lot of brick and mortar stores. And they are the ones who are doing the evangelization for board games, saying, yeah, let's play board games. They are teaching the rules, making gaming nights and things. So they don't want to squeeze the brick and mortar stores. So all the established publishers, they don't want to make Kickstarters. It's only the new designers, the new publishers who can't live with it. It's like in French. So they start with Kickstarter. We've got a few like Monolith, the one who made Conan. They want to make this huge project. So they went through Kickstarter to make really big minis, games and things.
Cool.
I know the guys from Seventh Continent. Have you heard of this game? This big.
I have. It's all the hotness right now. I haven't played it. I'm not following it, but I do know that people are getting it and they're very excited about it. That's all I know.
So another funny story. It happened that they went to university with my cousin. So I met them like 3 years ago. They were starting to design this new game, Seventh Continent, and they were working on it for 2 years. And they say, okay, if we want to make a living with it, we have to go to Kickstarter. And as the game is really awesome, they went and they make like 1.5 million euros or dollars.
A lot of people are excited about that one.
On Kickstarters. So all these new designers, they go straight to Kickstarters because they want to make a living. It's like in the US, you can't, if you're not well known, you can go straight to brick and mortars. You're gonna sell 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000 games, and you can't live with it. So they go to Kickstarter.
I mean, I was on a walk. It's a crazy story, but I was on a walk with Bruno Faiduti at Gen Con, and we were just walking from one side of the building to another, we were outside going to a party. But anyway, point being, we were talking, and I was, talking about how it's hobby, and I had just assumed he was full time, but he even has a day job or some work that he does as well outside of making design. So even some of the most.
I think he likes. He's a teacher at university. I think he just likes teaching because I think he can live with only the rights he owns for.
That's what you would hope, right? But so you were actually saying that the community's small and you're able to email and gather and get feedback from French guys. Are these meetups or are they? I was talking to Fabio from Canada and he said Snakes and Lattes is like this one place where everyone goes and hangs out. Like, Where do designers sort of gather and communicate and play prototypes and do that sort of scene in France?
In France, there are a few places. So I live near Paris. So in Paris, there are 2 or 3 cafes where designers go there, like Bruno Peduti's. He often goes to a place called Le Nid, which is the nest in English.
Mm-hmm.
Or there are 2 or 3 other cafes in Paris where all the Parisian designers go there. Another time they go on convention, they play games,
Sure.
and like Alan Moon is doing this gathering of friends. Bruno Feduti is doing one also each year, like 2 hours drive from Paris. And all the French authors, a lot of them are gathering there too.
Cool, and that's sort of effectively I mean, when there's the gathering of friends on the state side, and you can think of it as sort of a invite-only, designer sort of centric weekend or week of game playing and chatting, right? It's about the same thing.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's like 100 and 120 people.
Oh, so that's
from
pretty
the
big.
French,
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
but from the French industry. And I went there for the last 2 years. Like 2 years ago, I met Seth Jeffrey from Tasty Minutes First Game. I met Inasi Cevicek from Portal Games, who were invited by Bruno. There was this another German author. I don't know if it was Kramer or I can't remember. But there were also Bruno Catala, and it was really great.
And
every night we played Bruno Catala's prototype. We made a whole campaign of Ignacy Cevicek first Machine.
Oh, there you have it.
Over 2 days, so it was really a blast.
So you guys are playing games just like us. It's and it's
we
funny.
Create games like you.
And, well, and it's funny because again, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable and put you on the spot sort of as a French expert, but compared to me, so much more. It's crazy. One of the things I was curious about. What?
Like your community, but at a smaller scale.
Yeah. How? Go ahead.
As I follow all the blogs and podcasts of American designer, all I heard is quite the same in France.
Right. It seems that way. One of the
just
things
smaller,
just smaller,
tighter, just smaller and very tight and very enthusiastic.
Yeah, well, clearly. I mean, for a long time now. One of the things I was curious about is a lot of times we talk about European influence and Euro-style games, and clearly in the French market you have a nice combination of both strong design, but also really strong art direction and you just very really beautiful products and a love for the thing that's being made in addition to the design, and maybe not necessarily the designer versus the company, but just games out of my experience with the games out of France typically have a really wonderful production value and theme and art, and sometimes it's more art than theme, but it's all there. When you think of games from the States and their influence in, say, the last 10 years or 5 years on, and again from your perspective, which is newer, when you think of the work coming out of the United States, what's your perception of it? I mean, is it all trashed? Is there things you like? Well, how has it influenced France, if at all?
I think it's the big Ameritrash games that are influenced us the most. Like Conan is with all these minis, all the material and things, but with simple rules and fast gameplay, because a game of Conan, you played it in 45 minutes, 1 hour. It's not like 4 hours long. Mm-hmm. So we took the best of you.
Sure.
And we polished it and make great games.
I see. Good to know.
Now, what the biggest influence? I think it's like the big mini games like the Simon and all these games, the Eric Lang games, and all the legacy games too.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering if the legacy had sort of started to penetrate on the in Europe more, considering, I mean, just how it really is like a new form.
I think it's quite scary. So I've not heard of a French designer doing a legacy
Oh,
game.
just because of the amount of work and scope.
Yeah, I, I heard to I can't remember his name, but he said it's really hard to make a legacy game when you don't have a game that is working yet. So if you have to create a game plus adding a legacy game, I think it's really hard work. So I think it's a bit intimidating for us.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really well suited for taking an existing mechanic and game and turning it
uh,
into a legacy, right? Like King Domino Legacy, right? Like you have something that's a really nice feel to it, and then you turn it into something. That's what Pandemic was. When you look at not Skyfall, Seafall, that's an example,
yeah,
or maybe
I remember the Rob Davio saying that it was really hard to create a game like C4 because he has to start with the mechanic and then create the
yeah,
legacy game.
doing both, right? And
Stuff
and
like
it can
that.
be tough. It'll be interesting to see. I think the biggest sort of known effort right now is Charterstone by Jamie Stegmaier, right, and Stone Mountain
Clearly,
Games.
clearly.
And so it'll be interesting. You know, and what I can say about, in addition to just being a great designer, he does all the work in terms of play testing and blind play testing and beta testing. So I think there's a lot of confidence that it's going to be fun and engaging. You know, whether it's a flash in the pan or not, who knows? But it's certainly a game that I think is going to push it. I like the little ways in which legacy is being incorporated into things too, right? Even small things like you probably aren't familiar with it, but there's a game, Mole Rats in Space. It's by Matt Leacock, so from
Yeah.
Pandemic, but it's basically shoots and ladders, like for kids. I mean, it's a super simple cooperative game, but cooperative shoots and ladders in space. That's the elevator pitch. But when you get it, there's a packet, a sealed package that says, after you win the game 3 times, open it up. So there's a little check mark on the back. You check it 3 times, and then you open it, and then there's some additional cards that get integrated into the game. So I think there are some
Okay.
ways to not take on a year-long story arc, but provide people with surprises that aren't, in your first game, which is interesting.
Yeah. As a young designer, I thought of this process to incorporate after a few wins these new cars to complexify a bit the game and things. I think it's things that designers are thinking of.
Yeah, yeah. It's really. I think it's a wonderful time in games, right? To see how this stuff is all moving along and changing and growing. And one of the things that I've been trying to do slowly is, is expand my understanding of, again, different markets and different designers in France and Canada and Europe and Germany and Poland and all these different places and how they fit into the board game scene. Because when you sort of enter into an industry or market, you enter in where you are, right? So I'm sort of learning outwards from the States. Um, and so we talked about sort of how you how you guys meet in France and game and play and pitching the publishers. We talked about the
Yeah,
community. Go
and
ahead.
just one more thing for where the people meet. We've got a lot of regional designer groups that are organizing these days. So, like in Brittany, you've got one in the north, you've got one near Lyon, which is the second or the third city in France. So, every everywhere designers are gathering to playtest, to create, to exchange. So it's been organizing a lot these last 2 days. We create an association for the author in France last like 1 year ago.
Oh, cool.
So it's all being structurizing right now.
That's awesome. Another video I'm working on, it's taking me a little time though, is there's another organization called the Game Artisans of Canada, or Game. I think that's it. Maybe I misspoke, but it's basically that kind of thing where it's a meetup group that has different charters for different areas, and it's really game artists and game designers who get together, and there's very little expectations other than if somebody helps you by reviewing or looking at something you've done. Um, you do the same, and they end up working together and sort of associating. League of Game Makers too. We never, it never really branched into some big things, but it was just a reasonable small group of designers who just were helping each other and trying to promote information and grow. And over time, all of those, not all of them, but many of those designers have gone on to do lots of different cool games and products and grow into the industry. So it sort of became a space to meet and discuss and learn, right? And I think that's a really powerful part of being comfortable entering into the industry, right? Because it's very scary at first. You have no idea, right? You just have a game, you played a game, you created this other thing, but you got to figure out where to take it and what to do.
Yeah, you really have to gather info, so on the contract, so how to meet the publisher, how to make a pitch. Everybody has to make it work.
Yeah. Do you guys do any sort in the States? There's a sort of, in addition to proto spiels, there's this speed dating concept, which is at conventions. James Matthew, I don't know if he started it, but he did a lot of them, and Indie Game Alliance is taking over it. But basically, where a bunch of designers come up and a bunch of publishers, and they basically have like 5 minutes to pitch their game, and then they switch. Do they, or whatever, however much time? Is there anything like that speed dating thing in France, or not so much?
Yeah. So the biggest con in France is in Cannes. You know, the Festival de Cannes for the movies.
Yes, for the movies. Is it the same one?
Yes. So we've got the same one for the games.
Okay,
so
cool.
It's the biggest con in France. I think it's like 100,000 attendees for 4 days. So it's really, really huge. And they, for 3 years now, I think, they are doing these speed datings with, between authors and publishers.
Have you done one yet, or no?
No, I've never been to Cannes. I'm going this at the next con because I've got a game which will be released with IELLO there.
Awesome.
So, but at any convention in France, at any big convention, you can take a meeting with a publisher like Orange or IELLO, and if they know you, you can pitch them your 2 or 3 games like in half an hour. So it's not speed dating, but it's really easy to get contact with publishers. It's even easier when you've got already 1 or 2 games signed with publishers, like everywhere. But when they know you, it's really easy to meet them at the con and pitch them a game for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would think that you've sort of, by the end of, in the next 12 months, you'll have crossed that threshold, right? You'll have, again, having a HABA game and a IELLO game. I mean, that's, you'll do a big box Days of Wonder, and it'll be all set, right?
It was even faster than that. It took me only 1 year to get this threshold.
That's crazy, man. Congratulations.
It's just by winning this design contest and meeting a few publishers, and everything went really fast.
Good. Well, I mean, I feel like you've done a really nice job of giving some sort of this perspective on what it's like to be in France today, and not just be one of the elders who like, run the show already and have all the puppets. But I tell you one last good story. Sure, please.
The story Bruno Català's always told is that when he started designing, Bruno Feduti's open his arm and say, okay, I'm going to give you contact to French publishers, the old ones that have disappeared now, like which is called Descartes and things. And he's got his first games published thanks to Bruno Feduti. And now he's doing the same thing with all the new French designers. If you go to him, he said, okay, tell me your game, how can I help and things. So it's like a French tradition now. If you're young, you can go to the elder ones and
come on in. We'll show you around.
Exactly. And they will give you publishers' emails, and if they think your game is good, they will help you.
Yeah, and that's been my experience in the game space. Actually, my background originally was in video games, and I never really saw that type of behavior as much with video games. And video games, a lot more cutthroat, a lot more, what can you do for me today? But in board games, not with those designers, but with other people, I have seen that, that there's a willingness and an openness to help, share, promote, evangelize, do all those things to just sort of again, build the industry and help everyone just sort of get a little higher. And I think it's, it's special and it's fantastic and it's super, again, my limited vantage point, but Kickstarter unlocking all of these different groups to sort of get into it helped because there was a little bit of a chokehold between, the big publishers, distribution and retail. And as online sales and Kickstarter has disrupted that, there's some negative things as well. And lots of people are impacted in different ways. But it has allowed for more natural growth and grassroots all over the place and people doing those things. So it's been super cool. Do you have any, before we end, do you have any questions for on the
Yeah,
state side of things or?
I got one question for
Sure.
you. As a French designer, how do I reach English or American publisher?
Well, that's a great question.
Because I won't go to cons in America; it's too expensive for me. So do I meet them only at Essen, or how can I reach them? Through
That,
emails?
yeah, I mean look, it's a great question. So one, um, certainly Essen's an option because there are a number there, the bigger ones. I think some publishers take solicitations via their website or otherwise, and others don't. I think that it's sort of hit and miss. You can certainly try it, and they'll accept it, especially a number of the sort of up-and-coming publishers who are really trying to sort of gain momentum and speeds. Couple successful Kickstarters, and they're growing. Like if you want to, I don't know how far you're going to get sending out, if you want to, what's a really big, I don't know. Renegade's getting big. I don't know how much sort of random emails they're taking or whomever. But so one, you can go that route, and you just need to figure out who they are. But again, if you can start your sell sheet with like, here's the game I made for HABA, here's the game I'm making for IELLO. I mean, I think somebody's going to say like, okay, tell me more. I
Yeah.
think if you can get to a convention's just like, I mean, it's almost the same as in France, as far as I can tell. If you're at a convention, any one publisher, you say, hey, do you got a few minutes? Can I show you this? Can I show you that? Absolutely, you'll sit down and play. Speed dating as well. We also have contests. As far as I know, there's no national restrictions. I've never seen a contest that said, hey, if you don't live in the United States, you can't be a part of it. So I would certainly recommend looking at different contests that are happening stateside and just submitting like you do in France. Beyond that, though, what I'd really recommend, which is how I would do it, is by participating and engaging in the community, in the different Facebook groups, and getting to know people.
Okay.
You just can sort of have that conversation, and then people will try it out and maybe let their friend know, or asking, hey, who might be a publisher? Does anyone know anyone there? You're always going to be more successful with an introduction. Hey, you're not talking to the publisher, but you're talking to somebody who knows somebody at the publisher, right? And that goes a long way. Like for example, we can talk about it after, but say you had something like, hey, here's a game I'm looking for somebody to pick up, and you could say, hey Ed, would you play it? I'll say sure, because you did a Q&A with me, and I'm happy to help you out. And I'd say, oh, this really looks like a Renegade thing, or this really looks like something that Passport might be interested in, or this might be something that, whomever. And I can just say, hey, Scott, they're both Renegade and Passport are both Scott. So hey Scott, or hey this person, hey that person. What do you think? Is it interesting to you? Or even someone in Australia, like most of that community that's very active. There's really no regional. Like I don't know who's who, where is where. Like I just had again, I just spoke with Fabio from Canada. So you can sort of pick the publisher, or you can just sort of engage the community, much like again you're talking about stateside, and find that opportunity. I think a good game shines. So if you have something that's really exciting and fun, you
Yeah,
just
I've
want to
got
get in
some.
front of people. You're like, I got a couple games. It's just a few. But no, I think it's a good question, because probably not as many publishers from the States go to Europe other than at the big conventions. But I definitely I recommend. I think there's an opportunity. Again, when I talk to people online, like I think we talked the first time. Maybe I had a video and you messaged me and we said hello, or something like
Yeah,
that.
I've seen your name pop up on my Facebook page, and I say, oh, I like Edo, I like this video,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna ask him to be my friend on Facebook.
Yeah, so he asked me to be your friend, and I said hello. But like, I don't know where you're from. Like, your name isn't, John Smith, but like, I'm used to people all over the United States having, names I don't
Yeah,
recognize, right? So like, for me, it's just, oh, hey, here's somebody to talk to, chat, and go from there. So I actually think it's probably, again, short of just soliciting directly, trying to sort of, like, in this digital age, there's no reason the French board game community needs to be separate from the U.S. board game design community as far as that is, and everyone helping each other. It's really just a matter of connecting, right?
really.
So I have
So
quick. So let me ask you this: you have a couple games. I don't know
yes.
this. Since after this video, another 50 or 100 people will know who you are, but they probably hadn't heard of you first. What are two games that you're looking for a publisher? Like, what's your elevator pitch for two games you got going?
So okay, I've got these great games. It was picked by big French publishers, but they dismissed it. So it's still looking for a publisher.
Those
So
French guys, whatever. Go on.
so my elevator pitch is so you're these herbalists and you're crafting flowers with transparent petal cards. So your people are creating their flowers and they're trying to sell them to the other leagues in the town, like the florist, the healer, the poisoner, and this game is really nice because people are creating something in front of them. They're creating flowers, putting these transparent cards, mixing colors, mixing color and shapes and things. So I think this game should find a publisher because my playtesters, it's their favorite games from the one I've done. And the first two got signed with HABA and IELLO, so I think we can find a.
Yeah, well, it's. I would tell you, there's certainly more of an interest in pretty and flower or herb or those type of games. I mean, certainly I was successful with Herbaceous, but are you familiar with a game called Lotus by Renegade
Yes.
Games? Have you played it?
I don't know. I've watched the videos, but I've not played it.
I mean,
So it's so the game is really pretty, but it's quite different because on this game you're not.
No,
You
don't
can
react.
create.
Time it out. Don't react like a designer. I'm not comparing the
Okay,
game.
okay.
What I'm saying is, hey, Renegade has published a flower game that I believe has been done well for them. So if you had a chance to play it, and you could say, hey, well, my flower game is different, like you're describing, but a nice sort of complement, they might be interested because that was a 2016 game, and for 2018 they might want to have an updated Lotus or a new Lotus with some different mechanics. So that there might be an opportunity there if the relative weight of the game is the same, not the mechanics, but the sort of challenge difficulty, because you're sort of they're extending that pretty brand for them, and that's an
Yeah.
important brand. So that's something to think about. Okay, so that was game one. Flower game. Everyone loves a flower game with transparent cards. Transparent cards are pretty hot, So what else?
And it's really women inclusive too, because everyone loves to create pretty things, even women. So
Yeah,
we need everyone to come in the board game industry.
of
So
course.
I think it's a great game to include everyone in the industry.
Fantastic. We have one more minute. Do you have another elevator pitch?
Yes, I've got this great kids game because I do games for kids games and family games and more gamer games. And I've got these. So the first game I signed, and it's still looking for someone. It's little 2 to 6 players, and it's really simple. And you can. It's like a strategic game, but if you're two players, you can play it in in 7 minutes. So it's really quick. And if you're 4 players, you can play it like between teams of 2 players, and it's less than 20 minutes.
Okay.
So really,
but
really
what's
fast,
the mechanic? What's
strategy. Your team's fighting to get control of an arena.
Oh, okay.
A small arena.
Little area control game.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Really
So
simple.
if publishers out there that have gotten this far in this video, if you're curious about those 2 items, feel free to reach out to this guy. You can find him online and anywhere else.
Publisher.
And who knows, maybe it's a good fit for you. I think the hook on the flower one's probably there, so I would recommend maybe leading with that one. But the other easy light games, you might be able to find a good contest to enter and put that in too. So thanks for the time. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I hope you learned as much. I hope you didn't learn as much about France as I just learned. I hope you knew some of this. But if you didn't, thanks for joining. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.